Hello, everyone. So I wanted to make a quick video here as 2017 wraps up, kind of cover, I guess, the most recent things happening in Trump's administration. I'm not gonna go into like all of the things that happened earlier in the year. I've done videos on that. If anyone wants to watch that, it's there. So I want to go over some of the recent things wrapping up the end of the year. So net neutrality, of course, has pretty much been officially repealed by the FCC. It's going to be a long uphill battle if we are to get back to it. It's not impossible. There's a lot of pressure coming down from the states on the FCC about this. I mean, a lot of lawsuits that are happening. States like New York and I think Washington basically or like Washington basically has their own net neutrality, and I think New York is trying to go in that direction. But it's actually interesting because it's broadening the debate over the internet, and now people are kind of having the discussion of whether or not you should have public broadband funded by the government, I guess, and run by the government. From what I understand, based on people's reaction to it, it's actually quite positive, and doesn't surprise me because I mean, what we have now is a system of corporations that are price gouging people, and that's basically what the FCC has said. They're gonna repeal net neutrality, so corporations basically have free reign to do whatever they want at this point. I mean. You talk about things like hidden fees, like whether they're basically stealing money from you and you don't even realize that you're being charged something, or, if you don't read the fine print, whatever. That's largely the way things are now. But like the FCC has just basically said, like it's all up in the air. Like there's no way to run the internet because net neutrality was supposed to be the mold for that. It was supposed to basically keep the internet the way it was all along, and just have more defined, clear regulations on it to keep it the way it was. But what Ajit Pai and his cronies at the FCC, the supporters of repealing net neutrality, are saying is like they're in favor of net neutrality. They're actually the ones that are in favor of it because they're making the market more open. And like I'm saying, like it's giving corporations just more free reign to do whatever they want. I mean, this is largely, it goes back to 2014. This is kind of like almost what sparked the debate about net neutrality here. Verizon was caught throttling Netflix traffic, even though they'd paid for more bandwidth. So actually, it's not even just people that we're talking about necessarily that are being affected. Corporations are like essentially at war with each other, and it comes down to the ISPs basically wielding the most power right now with this FCC decision, and they're telling other companies, yeah, we're going to charge you more, and you're not even going to get the results that you want, basically. And I mean, Netflix is a big corporation, so imagine how that impacts small businesses that would have websites. Imagine how that would affect independent journalism. This is what's at stake here. So corporations, they're not to be relied on to do the moral and just thing. It's just we have to hold them accountable, and we have to be vigilant, against them. So what the FCC is doing is basically stepping back and saying, okay, we're not really interested in doing that and in upholding the law, because we're going to change the law. So this is an example of bureaucracy being a very negative thing because of corruption, I think. I mean, Ajit Pai, I mean, he already worked for Verizon. He's going to come out of this position at the FCC. He may even have to resign because of how unpopular he is down the line. But when he gets out, he's getting a paycheck somewhere. I guarantee it. like the people who should have the power to strip away laws like this, like something that's so it really impacts people heavily. It shouldn't rely in the hands of just a select group of politicians. I mean, these people were not voted in; they were appointed. I know a lot of people like to say like, "Oh yeah, well, like Obama appointed Ajit Pai, so like that's like bad against Obama, right?" Well, yeah, I mean, but Trump made him the head of the FCC, so like, what is the claim that you're making here? I mean, like, yeah, I guess I don't like that Obama appointed him. Yeah, I didn't know about him, but uh, is your point? I don't know. Like, it's funny because it goes against even their own logic. Like, they hate Obama, but then they're going to use a decision that he made to back their claim up. Like, it's just completely backwards world the conservatives live in. So yeah, the people I think who should have more power in changing the law that way, I think it should be more on the representative side of things with the American people, and like you have Congress, in theory, they're supposed to represent the American people's views. Um, but what we saw was, politicians, government officials going against the will of 80% of the American people, and by the way, including 75% of Republicans. So these people are going against their own party here. I mean, like these are the middle class people that would be affected by a decision like this. Um, yeah, and I would just emphasize again, like we can't just step back and say like, oh yeah, everything's gonna figure itself out, free market. They're gonna not price gouge people. They already price gouge you. They just do. So the idea that stripping away these regulations, they're just gonna do the right thing is ridiculous. So then we go to the tax bill, which is basically passed, if I'm not mistaken, and it's a disaster. It's going to effectively cut taxes on a lot of the middle class. I mean, the tax cuts that are there, like it's really like it's crumbs compared to what the wealthy get in return for this tax bill. I mean, the estate tax is gone, like, and the estate tax only affects people that are have $5.5 million or more. So if you have $5.5 million, you're not paying any estate tax until after that. So I just don't get like people, they are not nuanced when it comes to taxes, in my opinion, because it shouldn't be that difficult to see that like a lot of money like that, you need to have a progressive tax system where you're treating that amount of money differently from, I don't know, let's say a small business that's like a farmer, like, because a lot of people are like, oh yeah, it's going to affect small farmers and small businesses, the estate tax. Well, you actually look at the numbers and they're very, very insignificant amount of people that are actually farms that would be affected by the estate tax and all that. So I guess that's even more moderate for most people. Like I'm saying we need to we need to necessitate it, excuse me, based on need and based on what's contributing, I guess, the most to society. So if you have a small business, a farm, whatever, and it's worth a lot of money, I could see maybe having a system where we go a little easier on that guy. But if you're talking about just an obscene amount of money, over $5.5 million, yeah, I'm not going to take much sympathy for you. Like you should have a tax system that's it was at 35% before this, so it's not that much to ask, in my opinion. And of course, like, it's always such a big question, like whether you raise taxes on the rich, but like taxes are high on the middle class all the time, and they can't, a lot of times they just can't make ends meet. So income inequality is just growing in this country. It's a fact. So I think it's ridiculous to be having these conversations, honestly. But you have people like Ivanka Trump going on Fox News and making an ass for herself, like just straight up. She said that this tax bill was going to ultimately eliminate the national debt. Eliminate the national debt. This just so not only is that not possible, you can't eliminate the national debt. That's $19 trillion. We've had national debt since Andrew Jackson was president. Not only is that not going to happen. Excuse me. This tax plan is adding $1 trillion to $1.4 trillion to the deficit. This is coming from the party that's supposedly is in favor of fiscal conservatism. And oh my God, the deficit, like, what are we doing all this spending? But now they're raising the deficit $1.4 trillion at most. And Paul Ryan's going around saying we need to offset that by cutting entitlement programs, which is basically he's going to be cutting Social Security, Medicare, among other things. I mean, there's so many things that are going to affect a lot of people and kept people out of poverty. Excuse me. These entitlement programs that Republicans like to demonize all the time. It's funny to me too, because Social Security and Medicare in particular. I mean, Social Security has kept a lot of people out of poverty. I mean, it could be in the millions, but the older people that would largely benefit from Social Security and Medicare, they benefit from these things, and yet they support the GOP, and they're always out to defund these things. They're always such deficit hawks when it comes to that. Like, oh, Social Security is going to it's going to run out of money, so we need to cut it. But at the same time, whenever it's a question of funding the military and endless war, interventions in 8 different countries, because of Niger now that we're bombing there. When it's a question of funding corporations, giving them subsidies, and these corporations are already worth billions of dollars for research and development. Blank check for them. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much we spend. I mean, over half of our budget goes to the military, and at the end of the day, does it keep us more safe? Well, I guess the answer to that question now is a little bit more nuanced, because under Trump, ISIS has kind of dwindled, and I would argue it's not largely to do with Trump. I would argue that ISIS is kind of on its last legs, anyways. It was always kind of a makeshift organization. I mean, they had kind of a social media presence, or at least like putting out their propaganda videos, and people would get hooked by them. I think like at their height under Obama, they had around like 26,000 people, and I don't know if that's situated like in one location or it's spread out, but 26,000 people is still not anything to scoff at in terms of like if you're a terrorist organization. But yeah, I mean, like, compared to the U.S. military, it's nothing. It's like we can, like, that. It's done. And largely the reports have been Syria declared victory, Iraq recently declared victory. So I think it's pretty much set and done. Except are we going to leave these places? No, I really don't think we are. We're amping up our war in Afghanistan, I think, for that very reason, because we're basically running out of ISIS people to fight. So I guess there is a presence of them in Afghanistan, and our whole goal in being in Afghanistan in the first place was to go after Osama bin Laden, and we killed him already. And then we decided we're going to go after the Taliban too. So it has nothing to do with morals. It has nothing to do with spreading freedom and democracy like we're told it is. I mean, we are literally allies with Saudi Arabia, who beheads people because of ridiculous things, like being an atheist or being gay. Like, this is... it's such a double standard, of course. Um, but I just sorry, I got off in the weeds there. I just wanted to go back to the tax bill, and Orrin Hatch, who's like one of the oldest guys in Congress, is ridiculous, and is saying he made a point like a few times of saying like we're not going to fund CHIP, which is a children's health insurance program. We're not going to fund that because, quote, we shouldn't spend billions and trillions of dollars to help people who won't help themselves. But like, what is going on? These are kids we're talking about here. We're talking about, you're talking about like kids have to, I don't know, go to work to fund their health care. It's for kids that, they wouldn't otherwise get health care. They're in a dire situation, so the government steps in to help. And you're saying, no, we shouldn't do that. We can't spend billions and trillions of dollars. I don't know where he's getting trillions from, but like, it's just, again, it's all about where their priorities lie. If it's in favor, if their donors are in favor of it, they're going to be in favor of it too. If it is not that, they're not going to be as invested in that. And this is why the incentive structure in government needs to change, in my opinion. We need to get money out of politics. We need to make it so that politicians are just simply their only concern should be what is the majority of my constituents, what are they in favor for? And we obviously know that that's not the case now. There's so much private money being poured into politicians for their campaigns and so on. So it's absurd to think that with politicians, it's almost similar, I would say, to the way you should treat corporations. Like you shouldn't just take these people at their word, politicians. You need to hold them accountable. You need to really, go through their record with a fine-tooth comb and make your concerns vocal to them and see how they react. I mean, I think you need to give them a chance to see how they react under pressure. But if they still don't let up, and you've made your point clear, like, I don't know what else to say. This is why I struggle, like, in terms of supporting the Democrats going forward. I go back and forth with this because I think lesser of two evils always applies. Especially if you're talking about someone like Trump, who's basically opened the Pandora's box of like white identity politics in the bully pulpit of the White House. Like, we haven't quite had something that bad yet, and it's here now. So that's obviously the greater evil, in my opinion. But at the same time, if the Democrats don't learn the lessons that we should have gleaned from the 2016 election, if they continue down this centrist moderate path, like it's not gonna yield any fruit, I'm telling you. Like, centrism has had its day, going all the way back to Bill Clinton, how Obama governed, and Hillary Clinton. I mean, she was a regression in the Democratic Party. Like, I know people that they always want to stand up to defend her for whatever reason. And I've defended her too at times in ways that I felt like I should. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to be critical of her. It's ridiculous to think that I shouldn't be critical of her. And I'll give you just one example. But you could pick out of a hat, honestly, and tear apart Hillary Clinton's positions and why she's either ignorant, or she's either ignorant, she buys into the establishment ridiculousness, or she just knows what she's doing and she's being surreptitious about it. But the one example I was going to provide was with healthcare. So this past election, she was in favor of the public option going forward to I guess improve upon Obamacare, have a public option. In 2008, when she ran against Obama, she was in favor of single payer and he was in favor of the public option. And then Obama won, obviously, um, fought for the public option for like 2 seconds, and then caved to Obamacare, which was the right wing compromise, like going back decades, basically, on healthcare. So you see literally in that instance that it was a regression. Hillary Clinton was not um, this idealistic candidate, and you needed that in this election. I mean, look, people want to talk about like pie in the sky, socialism, whatever. Like, oh gosh, like you can't do that. It's never gonna work. Well, you know what? Obama made a lot of promises that he didn't end up keeping that were progressive, and he won 2 elections. Okay, so I've made this point, a few times, but Hillary, I don't even know, like playing it too safe. I don't even know if that's the phrase, because it seemed like she was playing it safe in terms of her donors. She didn't want to offend her donors, and basically the same people that run in the Bush crowd, the George W. Bush crowd, they all supported her. Like, so that's what it comes down to me. I mean, she was just not interested in having a true policy vision. She was running on identity politics. She was running on the fact that she was a woman, running on the fact that she wanted to be, I guess, socially liberal, and focused on that. She didn't have a economic agenda that was really a tangible thing that you could explain to people, and that's why she came across as very phony. It was all, excuse me, platitudes and cliches, and didn't amount to much of a vision. And I mean, I think that's not very controversial to say. A lot of times she would just say basically like, yeah, we're in the right, America's already great, she would say all the time. Things are going to stay the way they are. That's not a exciting message, and I've made that point a billion times, so I don't want to keep rehashing that. So let's go to Robbie Mueller, the investigation into Trump-Russia connections. And I've always, maintained that if you're making the point that Trump is like some kind of a Manchurian candidate who's like a puppet for Putin, like I don't necessarily agree with that. And my reasons being, what has Trump really done that has benefited Russia and Putin policy-wise? I mean, he's acted actually in the opposite direction. He didn't okay an Exxon deal with Russia, even though you have Trump, who supposedly, like best friends with Putin, and then you also have Rex Tillerson, who was the CEO of Exxon and also good friends with Putin. So even with all that, they didn't do it. You had the Syria strikes that Trump ordered that took out Russian aircraft, and it really kind of escalated tensions between U.S. and Russia briefly. I mean, it didn't turn out to be too much, to the point where it was like all out war, but yeah, it was definitely very tense. And then he also did the sanctions on Russia. Everyone was all crazy because like, oh, is it like he delayed them or something? Well, he ended up doing them. They're there. So these are extra sanctions going back as well to 2014 because of Crimea. Obama expelled diplomats after the 2016 election. Then you had another round of sanctions in 2017. So, and I have to admit, like maybe I'm just not very well versed with economic policy to understand, but I just don't see what these sanctions are going to accomplish. Because we should be getting to a place, in my opinion, where we can have some common ground with Russia. We should be, I mean, like strengthening the areas where we can agree. Example, taking out ISIS, which again we've been doing largely. Um, I think it's incumbent upon the U.S. to just, like, we can't act like we're always right all the time. I mean, like, look at history and look at the fact that, we've screwed over Russia in the past with Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Um, we've encroached on the UN border, and this is, I think, largely to do with the fact with why they don't like the U.S., or at least Putin does in his movement. They're very much like, they view it kind of like the old Soviet Union, the supporters, I guess, of Putin. Um, so yeah, again, I have not seen the evidence that Trump is in that camp, because what has he done that has benefited Russia really at all? Like, I'd like someone to answer that for me, and if you can then prove that there's some kind of, quid pro quo going on here, like, Trump got something in return for doing something for Putin, like this is what it comes down to. Like, I'm not interested, like you see ridiculous articles and videos, Trump and Putin have similar rhetoric when it comes to talking about the media, so therefore, what, like what does that mean? Like, they have similar rhetoric. They're both authoritarian leaders, I would say. Yeah. So that doesn't necessarily prove that they're connected whatsoever, that they have any kind of a collusion going on. So, but yeah, I would also add, though, shady connections are definitely there between Trump and Russian oligarchs. That's documented proof. Like, we know that he has connections in Russia, Trump, and people within his campaign. Paul Manafort, who is a very shady guy, he was indicted, and Michael Flynn, who, he broke the law. He just flat out broke the law. He didn't say that he was a foreign agent. He was supposed to register as one, because he was in government, and he didn't. And this is, you can't just get away with that, especially in this day and age where things leak. But on Fox News, like, the bias is so real, it's unbelievable to me. Because people like Jeanine Pirro, who's, like, honestly, like, batshit crazy. She goes on these rants and is saying, like, the FBI is biased because they're all Hillary Clinton supporters. And of course she doesn't understand that, she shit talked Obama for God knows what, and so she obviously has a bias and she's in favor of Trump, but she doesn't recognize that. She's like, all the FBI is pro Clinton, so therefore they're being nefarious. And she's claiming that, I actually don't know if she was the one that originally made this claim, but I know that she's been spreading the same sentiment. So she's been saying that thousands of emails were obtained illegally by the Robbie Mueller investigation. And, if this is true, if that's really true that they did that, then the evidence is not going to hold up in court. So, I mean, I think it's a little ridiculous to think, like, oh yeah, like, they got this, they got all this evidence illegally, so what? They're not going to be able to use that in court. Then it's just going to be thrown out. This is how law works, and you'd think someone like Judge Jeanine Pirro, would know that, being a judge and all. But whatever. She's out there saying that these people in the FBI, Robbie Mueller, a few other names that I don't know, these people should not only be fired, they should be arrested by Trump. Like, what? How does that happen? How do you do that, first of all? And secondly, is are you just in favor of a dictatorship at that point? Like, this is exactly what that is. You're talking about the president arresting people that are investigating him because some BS claim that they got evidence illegally, which, even if that's true, it's not going to matter in court. and they supported Clinton. And I mean, if that's even true, I don't even want to take their word for it. But this is the world that they live in.